Hi, welcome to Kickstarter. This is Neon Skies. Are you ready?
You're not ready. You're not ready, alright?
What is Neon Skies? It's a 128-page graphic novel that you can support on Kickstarter. Neon Skies is the story of the last human being surviving in a world where technology and humanity have essentially merged. We're already at a stage where we're essentially connected to our phones pretty much full time. Hell, you're probably watching this on your phone right now. We are connected to Twitter, we are connected to Instagram, we are connected to Facebook. And what happens when that connection is no longer external? What happens when that connection becomes internal? And how, as human beings, do we continue as a race after that? We explore it from the perspective of a single girl raised in this world. We explore it from the perspective of a mother trying to keep a girl safe from that world. We explore it from the perspective of a ruling corporation that is essentially a super government and a corporation all in one, that is now in control of most of the flow of technology to human people. Everything's connected in a much deeper way than it is even now. But it's looking at that future world from a perspective of how do we survive in it? Do we maintain our humanity when technology integrates itself to us so far? I'm a giant fan of Blade Runner. I've watched it a couple of hundred times at this point. I'm one of those kind of fanboys. I've always been fascinated with the idea of a cyberpunk world, and Blade Runner for me as a film nailed that world in a realistic sense of what would this world actually look like if it was real.
Blade Runner would have been the primary source of our inspiration for it because, I mean, one look at Blade Runner and you know exactly what it is. You know that it's this big dystopian view on the world in the future, and the type of technology utilized within Blade Runner is very close to home and very close to the possibilities that are facing humanity even today. And what we wanted to do with Neon Skies was look at it in a different lens. We decided to look at it from the perspective of our generation and what we're looking at within the world of growing technology. But what was interesting was when I started designing the characters, we started to realize our influences were showing through a bit more than we thought. And while we looked at it with this kind of hard graft, Blade Runner, cold, gritty, grounded kind of approach to a very elaborate story, instead it became more bombastic and it became louder. And that's what I really enjoyed, because as the artist I get to then experiment with ridiculous poses and ridiculous characters. And it was a lot of fun to then realize, and I remember texting Ciarán one day saying, there's a lot of X-Men in this. There's a lot of X-Men in this.
Key influences in relation to the writing was probably Chris Claremont's X-Men run. Chris Claremont for me is a storyteller who got to tell a very, very specific set of stories about characters over a very long period of time and really developed the world of the X-Men into something more than just being, you know, a simple superhero smash and grab story. And when I was coming together with Kev to discuss Neon Skies, the idea of what would superheroes in the form of the Blade Runner universe look like?
The elite villains of the story were very much based in the world of Metal Gear Solid, that kind of technology. Metal Gear Solid for me growing up was as close to science fiction as I got. And I loved the Cyborg Ninja and I loved all of those designs, the armor, the body armor. And in keeping with X-Men, you know, they wear the skin-tight spandex outfit. So I wanted to keep the old school skin-tight spandex, but give it a reminiscent vibe of Metal Gear Solid in that sense. It's by no means similar, but it's there. You know, to me anyway, it feels like it's there. And then in terms of art influence, well, for me personally, I reference about 6 artists regularly. If I'm ever stuck or if I'm looking for a way out of a hole that I've been drawn into, I would look primarily at Greg Capullo, I would look at Ryan Otley, Sean Gordon Murphy, Matteo Scalera, and Jock. They would be my primary go-to. I wouldn't feel like my art resembles the latter, Jock, Scalera or Murphy, but in terms of how they utilize inks and in terms of how they utilize scene setups, I would have very much looked at them as my kind of mapping point. And then obviously applying my own version, my own take to things on top. I prefer to use a lot of ink in my art. I prefer to use a lot of big shadows. And what I found with Neon Skies was the amount of color, I mean, neon's in the title, with the amount of color that was going to be present, I did have to restrain myself from using too much black to allow the colors to breathe. And stylistically, the colors then, at the time when I was going over the color process with Cristian Sabarre, who's our colorist, I asked him day one, because when we put the word out for a colorist, we put the word out to bring a colorist in that was going to be able to color Neon Skies powerfully. Not anything would do. Neon Skies had to have a visual appeal, an aesthetic that I had settled on long before Ciarán and I ever even hit the drawing board or hit the writing table. We brought Cristian Sabarre on board to colour Neon Skies because when he sent me his samples, my jaw hit the floor. My jaw hit the floor. This guy had raw talent to burn, so I had to have him. I just had to. He was exactly the colour artist that I wanted. What we want to do with this Kickstarter is establish our audience on a broader scale. And we want to make sure that for everyone who has been here from the beginning to everybody who's just joining now, that we give the best product that we possibly can. And your support genuinely means the world to us, because this project has been a labour of love since day one. We've gotten so much inspiration and so much energy from the creative industry and comic books especially, that we want to put our stamp on it, and we want to give what we believe is the best product we can create. We sincerely want to thank every single person who has supported us from day one. We decided very early to make the entire process of Neon Skies public.
Yes.
And the response was beyond anything we could have ever imagined. The interest, the questions, the people coming up to us at conventions asking us about the project. We genuinely can't thank you enough for validating our effort, because at the end of the day, the people who do what we do it because we love it. And it's your feedback and your response that gives us the energy and fuels us to keep going forward. And with that, for supporting Neon Skies, we really do appreciate you, and we thank you wholeheartedly.
From the bottom of our hearts. We couldn't do this without having any kind of audience, and we couldn't do this without having a wonderful team behind us to make it. So to everybody who's been involved in Neon Skies from either a creative or support capacity, thank you.
If you could find it in your heart,
In your hearts.
to just acknowledge us.
Reach into your wallets.
We don't want much.
No.
We just need a little
Shall we
to give you a lot.
Shall we euro?
Do you have a fiver, do you?
No. Thank you for taking the time to look at this video. But if you could take the time to consider actually spending some money on this project, then we can bring something that we've loved for a couple of years out to a public that we hope will love it too. Yeah?
Oh.